It looks like we have 43 folks on the line, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Zach Schalk. I am the Indiana Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. We are here tonight to celebrate new solar co-ops in Boone County and Hamilton County. So thank you all for joining us. So here's a look at what we're going to do tonight. So first we're going to see a little bit of a solar home tour from Zionsville Solar owners, Terry McCain and Mike Houndstein. And Terry and Mike are on the line, and after we watch their video, they'll be able to answer any questions you might have, as Roger just mentioned. I'll start the video shortly. And I should also mention we were originally planning to do this live, but Terry and Mike had the foresight and good instincts to actually look at the weather report and luckily recorded this video over the weekend while we still had some sunshine. So thank you for that, Terry and Mike. And then after we watch the video and get any of your questions answered by Terry and Mike, I'll go ahead and walk through a Solar 101 presentation. So you can learn a little bit about solar technology, solar economics, and how the solar co-op process works to help it make it easy for you to go solar. All right, and with that, you can go ahead and watch the video.
Hi, I'm Terry and this is Mike, and we installed solar on our house here in Zionsville in December of 2016, and we'd like to give you a brief tour of our system. We have 57 panels total in our installation, and 15 of them are located on this deck at the back of our house. There's very little shading here, and all we had to do was remove the slats for the pergola and replace them with solar panels. The other 47 panels are mounted on our garage roof. That number fits the existing space on the roof rather nicely. Each panel is rated at 290 watts, which results in a total system capacity of about 16.5 kilowatts. Our maximum production has been 15.5 kilowatts, which is about 94% of the rated capacity. Some inefficiency is expected from the horizontal orientation of the panels over the deck, and the garage roof is about 20 degrees off of due south. Our peak production is generally in March and October when there are no leaves on the trees. We lose about another 2 to 3% in the summer when we get some morning and afternoon shading from the nearby trees.
Okay, now we're going to move to the garage where we have all of the electronics and controls located. We elected to include a battery in our system so that we would have backup power in the case of a power failure. We don't have a lot of power failures here. They do happen occasionally, and when they do, we lose our phone service since our phone is internet-based and our cell coverage is so poor, we don't really have good coverage without the power on. We have two inverters. Each one is rated at 7.6 kilowatts. The inverters convert the DC voltage generated by the solar panels to the AC voltage that's compatible with the conventional utility supplied power. The first inverter is a Solarize HD wave that controls 28 of the panels. The second inverter includes battery backup. It's a storage against my SolarEdge, and it allows it to manage the energy flow into and out of the battery. The backup battery is an LG Chem battery that's rated at 9.6 kilowatt-hours. The average power used by the loads we've connected to the battery is about 800 watts, which means the battery can supply those needs for about 12 hours. During the storms a few weeks back, the battery kicked right in when the power went off and we were able to operate as normal. We have two added electrical panels for the battery and generator backed up circuits, as well as a connection point for the generators. The battery loads, we've included two refrigerators, a freezer, two computer rooms, the internet and TV router, and one TV. The generator loads include all those backed up battery loads, plus we added the sump pumps and a furnace. The sump pumps and furnace are large power loads and would quickly drain the backup battery. In our case, we live on a hill with good drainage, and our sump pumps don't operate very often, so we decided to operate those via the portable generators if the power went off for a significant amount of time. We also added a consumption monitor so we can see the power flow to and from the utility company. Without the consumption monitor, you can see what the solar panels are generating, but you can't see where that power is going and how much you're using from the utility company. A consumption monitor is totally optional, but it's great for engineers like me who like to know everything. So the question everybody always wants to know is, how well is it doing? Well, first, I have to give you your mileage may vary statement. The performance is always dependent upon a lot of factors, some of which are the temperature outside, the sun, or more importantly, the lack of sun due to rain and snow, and what you're doing in the household and how often you're turning on the high power loads. So we have full year data for 2019, and in 2019 our total consumption was 23,700 kilowatt hours. The solar system produced 17,400 kilowatt hours, or about 73% of our electrical loads. With our system at Duke, we estimate we saved about $1,700 from those power generated by the solar system, which for us is about a 6.2% return on investment. That doesn't include the battery system.
In the 2.5 years we've had our system, we've been very pleased. There's been no problems. We did our installation in 2 phases. We first did the solar panels and the meters in 2016, and then we added our battery back up last year. So it really doesn't have to be done all in one installation. But overall, we've been very, very pleased with how it works.
All right. So thank you again for putting that video together, Terry and Mike. Really appreciate it, and hope everybody enjoyed getting to see a solar system in action. At this point, if you have any questions for Terry and Mike, feel free to pop stuff into the chat. I see we've got at least one question in, and before we start answering questions, I'm going to go ahead and ask Terry and Mike to add anything that you'd like to add.
I'm not sure at this point that we have anything yet, or.
No, I would just say that 2018 was our best year, the first full year we had it. 2019, the sun load was less, or we had a lot more rain, and so we generated probably 90% of the power we did in 18, and then 20 right now, the first start of the year, looks probably somewhere in between the two. So again, the amount of power you generate is going to vary a lot depending upon what the environmental conditions are. I would say probably rain is our biggest, or clouds. You will generate power when it's cloudy, but not a lot. And then snow, I think there's a question about snow on the solar panels. The ones that are horizontal, the snow stays on there for a long time. And I would say snow is a pretty good solar insulator. So those will block and not generate much. But the ones on the garage, a lot of it depends on, they might be a day or two before the sun will heat them up and the snow will slide off. So snow is a big insulator. So that one can hurt you if you have a lot of snow and not a lot of time for them to clean themselves off.
Great, thank you, Terry. Or I'm sorry, thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a few additional questions coming in. So one is asking if you added panels, would you have gotten a greater percentage of total power usage supplied by the solar?
Sure. There is a limit on what you're allowed to install. I think with Duke, we couldn't put any more in than what our power was that we used in the year prior to installation. So they will limit you to that. We were theoretically at 90%. Our rated, with the computer estimates of the sun load and stuff, said we'd probably be at 90%. We're obviously not there with due to the some of the inefficiencies of our installation, and of course variation in what you use. If it's really cold outside in the winter, you're going to use more heat load. If it's really hot outside in the summer, you're going to use more air conditioning load. So those will vary significantly from year to year. But the other thing is that with our system, our 2 inverters pretty much maxed out the solar panels. So if you added additional solar panels, you would go to larger inverters, or most likely rather than a 3rd inverter. But we're pretty much at the capacity of our 2 inverters with the number of panels we've got right now.
Great. And we're also seeing a couple of questions asking about the expected payback period for your system.
So, when they give us a sales pitch, they'll have the models and stuff that they'll use. They'll estimate, what your production will be for your location, and they try to put in tree shading and orientation and that type of stuff. And they said our payback period probably be about 9 years. I would say ours is more likely going to be about 11 with the, what we've generated off the first couple of years type of thing. So that's in the ballpark, but it's, I think the first year my estimated return was probably in the neighborhood of 7.5% with the additional power generated. So that was a better year than this year.
Great, thank you. And I'm seeing a few questions that we will definitely cover in our Solar 101 presentation. So if I don't ask your question, don't worry, we definitely will cover it later. Eliana asks, do you have neighbors? Have they commented on how it looks, and how do you keep your garage so clean?
The garage was cleaned up for the presentation. Fresh new paint too. We do have neighbors. We live in a subdivision. I would say there were quite a few of the neighbors didn't even realize that we put on solar. The panels that are viewable by most people are on the side of the garage. And as you come down the street, it blends right in with our roof. And it's a surprise to many that we have solar.
One of the things we did do is that we had a choice of a panel that had a white border or a black border. And we elected the one with the black border because I think it stood out less than if you had, so they're kind of all dark versus having some with the white borders around the edges that make them look like you can see them better. So that made a big difference.
Great. So we will definitely talk about weather damage, but have you had any concerns about hail damage or any issues with that since your installation?
No, they're hail rated, whatever that means. We did check with our insurance company, and our homeowners insurance said there's no increase in rates for having solar panels on the, and they're covered. So for stuff like that. So right now, doesn't seem to be a concern.
And we've had several instances of hail, and you can't, there's been nothing that it's done to it.
Great. And during the presentation, we will definitely talk about the longevity of solar systems as a whole. But we do have a question here about the battery. What is your estimated battery life, and how, if and how would you expect to need to replace it?
So since we're using ours for backup, ours doesn't get exercised a lot. And I think the warranty on the battery is 10 years. And they're going to give you some number, like they'll give you 80% of capacity at a 10-year point, I think is the number. I'd have to look that up again to be sure, but they will not last forever. But I'm hoping to get 10 plus years out of it without needing to replace. And I expect to do that with the lithium-based batteries.
Okay, great. Thank you, Terry and Mike. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for asking questions. You are all welcome to continue sending questions just to panelists, but if you also want to make sure others can see your panelists, be sure, or I'm sorry, can see your questions, be sure to select that you will chat to all panelists and attendees so that other folks can see your questions and then can potentially answer it in the chat, since we have a lot of solar owners on the line as well. Okay, and with that, I think we can go ahead and kick off our Solar 101 presentation. So first of all, I want to start by saying thank you to our partners and volunteers who are instrumental to the success of these new solar co-ops in Boone County and Hamilton County. So first of all, in Boone County, we have a great partner in the town of Zionsville and Boone County Voices for Change. And we also have several statewide partners who are working with us in several areas, including Hoosier Environmental Council, Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, Citizens Action Coalition, Sierra Club, Hoosier Chapter, Earth Charter Indiana, and the Hoosier Electric Vehicle Association. And then in Hamilton County, we also have several wonderful partners, including the City of Carmel and Fishers, Carmel Mayor's Youth Council, the Hamilton County Board of Commissioners, Westville Green Together, and Carmel Green Initiative. And I should say before I introduce Solar United Neighbors, we are also working in several areas around the state and have a very strong partnership with Solarize Indiana, and Solarize Hamilton County is the local chapter of that organization. And I'll talk a little bit more about them shortly, but I want to recognize them as strong partners who are helping to grow the solar movement around the state. So Solar United Neighbors is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are a community of people building a new energy system with rooftop solar at the cornerstone. We help Hoosiers go solar, join together and fight for their energy rights so we can create a 21st century energy system that's clean and equitable, that directs benefits and control to local communities. As I mentioned, we are a national organization. We have our headquarters in Washington, D.C., and we have on-the-ground programs in all of these states, and we launched our Indiana program just last year in 2019. So I give these presentations a lot all over the state, and a question that I often hear is, how can solar work here in Indiana? As Mike and Terry mentioned, you know, sometimes it snows or it rains and we don't have as much sun to be producing electricity from. And so what we like to start these presentations with is this map. This is from NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratories. And what it does is it captures the available solar resource or solar intensity around the country. And you can see the scale runs from kind of bright red, where there's a lot of solar resource available, down to a kind of pink or purple, where there's not as much. And what you can see here is that Indiana is right there in the middle in green. And the inset just to the right is actually Germany. And what's great about seeing this is that Germany, as you may know, has some of the highest solar penetration and solar energy production in the entire world. So if they can make it work in Germany, we can definitely make it work here in Indiana. And the other key thing I like to note is that solar is growing in Indiana. What this map shows are the known solar installations compiled by our friends at Siren. And this is kind of a snapshot in time in 2011. We see there's not all that much solar around, and in 2011 was an important year that we wanted to highlight here because that's when the regulatory commission that oversees electric utilities here in Indiana expanded net metering, which basically opened the market up and made solar more economically viable. Between 2011 and 2017, there was quite a bit of solar activity, but slow and steady over the years. And in 2017, there was actually an anti-solar bill called SEA 309 that passed the General Assembly. And that measure, which I'll talk more about later, but basically put a timetable on the end of what's called net metering is what spurred Solarize Indiana to form as a statewide movement, bringing together neighbors to leverage their bulk purchasing power to go solar. And what you can see is that between 2017 and 2018, those in large part due to those Solarize campaigns in 2017, hundreds more Hoosiers went solar. And even since 2017, even since that bad law passed, Hoosiers around the state have continued to go solar. And to make this a little more concrete, we have this fun map zooming in just on Hamilton County. And what this shows is solar installations that have been a part of the 2017 and 2018 Solarize Hamilton County campaigns, and then also the 2019 Hamilton County Solar Co-op, which Solar United Neighbors and Solarize Hamilton County partnered on. So you can see all over the county, some in Indianapolis, some over in Zionsville as well. And we actually cropped one installation way up in Lafayette out. So this shows more than 50 homes have participated over the last couple years. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about our solar co-op membership. And I'll dive more into the details of what the membership, co-op membership looks like shortly. But basically it's a group process. It helps the group of neighbors and homeowners and businesses in a given geographic area leverage their bulk purchasing power to get a great deal on going solar, and it's completely free. That's a key thing to note. It's really just an opportunity to get a free custom quote on rooftop solar at a group rate. We have conducted more than 230 of these solar co-ops since 2008 all over the country. And so this is a process that is tried and true and we have a lot of experience in. But I also know that there are some folks on the line who actually may not be living in our co-op territory. And if you're still interested in getting help from Solar United Neighbors to go solar, we also offer an individual membership, and that would be $85 a year, where we would actually help you identify reputable installers in your area, help you solicit bids, and then help you compare those bids on an individual basis. But the bulk of the presentation will be about the solar co-op membership. And I should just say up top that we have open solar co-ops. Obviously the new ones we're launching in Boone County and Hamilton County, but also in Indianapolis. And so those co-ops are really open to homeowners and businesses in and around those areas. So the rest of the presentation today is really going to be separated into three parts. First, we're going to cover the basics of solar technology. Then we're going to talk about how solar co-ops work. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit more about solar economics and how you can make sure you're making a smart investment decision and you're seeing a return on investment for solar. Before I hop into solar technology, Roger, have there been any questions I should answer?
So a lot of the questions are about return on investment and about solar economics. So I think we can wait until we get a little further in.
Okay, well, I will answer those questions when we get to the economic stage. So today we're talking about solar photovoltaic technology, or PV. There are a lot of different, or there are many other solar technologies on the market, but this is the kind of most widely available and most economical, especially for homeowners, and it converts solar energy into electricity, as opposed to other technologies that might heat water or serve other functions in the house. So over the next several slides, we're going to walk through the different components of the solar system that are captured here in this diagram. So first, number one, you have the solar array. And those are, that's made up of the panels that will be on your roof, or if you have a ground mount display or installation somewhere on your property. But when you string together multiple panels, that's what makes the array. And the panels are the part of the system that capture the energy from the sun and turn it into direct current electricity. And then that direct current electricity, or DC electricity, flows into the part two of the diagram here, and that's your solar inverter. That's where that direct current electricity is converted into AC or alternating current electricity, which is what we use in appliances in our home. So then that alternating current electricity flows to number 3, which is your electrical panel. That's where all the circuits of your home come together. And if you have load or energy demand in your home, the AC electricity from the inverter will flow to meet that demand. But if you're actually producing more than what you need at that moment, the electricity will flow out through number 4, your utility meter, where it will go out onto the grid, and those electrons will be used by your neighbors and your neighbors' neighbors until they're used up. So before we get too deep, it's important to kind of lay out some terminology that you'll be hearing. First of all, we have kilowatts, or 1,000 watts, and a watt is a measure of power, and kilowatts are what your system is going to be sized in. So you get a kilowatt by adding together 1,000 watts, and your system will be sized by multiplying the number of watts produced by a given panel by the number of panels. So in this example that we have on this slide, there are 12 panels. They're each valued at 300 watts. And when you multiply 300 by 12, you get 3.6 kilowatt system size. The other term we want to highlight is kilowatt hours, and that's a measure of energy. That's what you actually pay for each month from your electric utility, and that's how you measure what your panels are actually producing. You can also see that this panel illustration kind of gives you a sense of scale. So the average solar panel is about 5 to 6 feet tall, about 3 feet wide, and so it really kind of depends on the exact panel, what the exact size is, but that's a rough range that you can expect. And finally, most homeowners are going to install a system anywhere between 2 kilowatts on the small side up to 12 kilowatts on the larger side, though there are also larger systems like Terry and Mike's in the residential market. But that gives you a rough sense of range for the size of the system that we'll be thinking about here today. So the first component, and obviously the most important component for a lot of folks, is the panels. So what you see here is how the panels are really solar cells, the silicon wafers that are used to actually collect the energy from the sun, that are then covered and encapsulated in materials designed to withstand the elements outside, and then ultimately wrapped up in a metal frame. And so when you, as I mentioned earlier, when you string those panels together, that's when you get a solar array, which is multiple panels strung together. The next part of the system, as I mentioned earlier, is the inverter. So again, this is the part of your system that takes the direct current electricity produced by your solar panels and turns it into alternating current electricity that can actually be used in your home. And I will describe the different options here, but for folks who are intimidated by some of the technical jargon and the different options here, an important thing to note up front is that your installer will design a system based on your specific needs, and they will make a recommendation about which inverter type is the best for you. But so we do have 3 different options of inverter types here. And I'll start on the left with the string inverter. String inverters are kind of the oldest solution as part of the market. And they work by stringing all of the panels together, hence the string in the name, and then doing the inversion process once in a single place of the inverter. And so this is great for simple systems and can reduce complexity. But it does have some challenges in that sometimes when certain parts of your system aren't producing for whatever reason, maybe there's shading or other complications, the entire output of the system will go down to that lowest common denominator, which can reduce efficiency on more complicated systems. So one way to think about the string inverter is as kind of an older string of Christmas lights, where when one bulb goes out, the entire string goes down. But so in order to resolve that issue, on the far right here, microinverters were created. And so microinverters actually do the inversion process at each individual panel level. So there's actually a mini microinverter underneath each panel. And this is great for really complicated systems and for maximizing efficiency, but it does add cost traditionally, and also adds additional components that can break. And so the kind of best of both world option is the string inverter with DC optimizers, which kind of combines both options and allows systems to operate efficiently without having to have individual microinverters under each panel. And so the metaphor we like to use to describe the string inverter with DC optimizers is like a newer or more modern strand of Christmas lights, where a single bulb goes out, but the rest of the lights stay on. So next, number 3 on that diagram is your electrical panel. So for most folks, the connection with an electrical panel is actually really simple. You're able to just kind of plug the panel or your solar system right into the panel, and you're good to go. For older homes or folks who might have smaller panels that are filled up, you might have to have a panel upgrade as part of your installation. But a good thing to note is that the installer, as part of the sales process while they're producing your custom quote, they will take a look at your electrical panel and will tell you upfront whether or not an electrical panel upgrade is needed. And as part of the co-op, you will receive a package as soon as you join that outlines all the different parts of the bid. And one of them is the cost of a panel upgrade. So you'll know upfront exactly, if you do need a panel upgrade, exactly how much it would cost, and it won't surprise you down the road. So next, we're going to move up to the roof, to where your panels actually connect to your home. So that's racking. So the key thing to note is that for really just about any roof type, there's a solution for you and a way to connect solar to your roof. For most folks who have pitched asphalt shingle roof, solar installers will use the flashing setup that we see in the top left of this these kind of picture array, and they will remove the shingle, actually connect right down to the frame of your roof, and then use sealant and capsulant, and then cover it over with the flashing that will essentially replace the shingle that they removed. But even if you don't have a pitched asphalt roof, there is more than likely a way to connect solar to your roof. For example, here we have a picture of a solar installation on a standing seam metal roof, which actually makes for a really simple installation. Oftentimes you can just clip right to the standing seams without having to do any kind of penetration. And for folks who are actually interested in doing a ground mount, that's also an option. We typically work with folks installing solar on their roof, and we encourage people to do so because you aren't using your roof for anything else. But if you're some other part of your property might be better for you, that's ground mounting is certainly an option. So what makes a good roof for solar? So there are a couple important components to factor in. So the first part is the orientation of the roof. You really, these days with the higher efficiency panels, can cover pretty much east to west and be okay. You really just don't want to be facing north. That's when you're not going to be receiving enough sunlight and enough solar energy to make the panels really viable and producing as much as you'd like. On a similar point, you want to avoid as much shading as possible. Anytime that your panels are shaded, they aren't going to be producing as much energy as they should be for you. And so you want to really make sure that your roof or wherever you're putting your panels will be have maximum exposure, especially during the kind of peak times of energy production. So anywhere between 9 and 10 in the morning and 2 and 3 in the afternoon, depending on the season. You also want to make sure that you have enough space to mount the panels. So as I mentioned earlier, kind of the smallest end of the residential solar market is around a 2 kilowatt system size. And a good rule of thumb is that you'll probably need at least 200 square feet of contiguous space to do that very small installation. It's always best to try to have all your panels tightly packed together to keep the system simple and reduce your cost. So trying to have contiguous space is an important part of the equation. And then finally, you want to make sure that your roof is in good condition. So if you think that you're going to need to replace your roof anytime within the next 10 years or so, you should probably get that done first before actually installing solar. And that's just because it's really expensive to take the panels down, replace the roof, and put the panels back up. And it'll definitely eat into your payback. So one thing that we actually don't have on the diagram of your solar system is batteries. And so for a lot of folks, we hear what happens when the power goes out. So something that is surprising to a lot of people is that actually when the electric grid goes down, most solar installations actually have an automatic trigger that will shut off the system. And that's actually a safety mechanism in order to protect line workers who might be working on the grid to fix whatever has caused the outage. And we don't want to be sending out any electricity that could hurt them while they're doing that important work. There are special inverters that you can actually get so that even if you don't have a battery system, your panels can continue to produce electricity and your home will essentially island from the grid. But again, that will only be effective if the sun is shining and your panels are actually producing. So for most folks, if you want power from your panels when power goes out, you'll want to install a battery backup system, a battery storage system. So in most cases here in Indiana, batteries are good for backup power, but they're not great as a return on investment or helping you produce an income the way that you can in some other states or utility markets. But batteries might be really valuable if you live somewhere with frequent utility outages, if you have critical loads in your home. So if you have medical equipment or other appliances that you simply do not want to have to worry about going out, or if you're really conscious about disaster or emergency preparedness. So that's all that we're really going to cover about batteries during this presentation. If you are interested in learning more, we actually have a free guide that you can download at solarunitedneighbors.org/storage to learn all that you need to know about pairing battery storage with solar installation. Okay, so that is kind of an overview of all of the kind of main components of your solar energy system. So just to recap, we have the solar array, which is capturing energy from the sun and turning it into direct current electricity. That DC electricity flows into your inverter, where it goes and becomes alternating current electricity. And that AC electricity then goes to your electrical panel, where it's either used up in your home, or if it goes out through the utility meter and goes out onto the grid, where it's used by your neighbors until those electrons are used up. So another question that we commonly get when we come to this point is, well, what happens to the electricity that goes out onto the grid? So that's where net metering comes in. So net metering, this is a lot of words on this slide, but the basic concept is it allows flow of electricity to and from customers. And it allows you to get the same value on the electricity that you're sending out onto the grid that you buy it from the utility for. And so the netting comes in that this is this equation that happens at the end of every month, where your electric bill is basically the amount of electricity you used minus the amount of electricity you produced. And if you build up credits, so if you're producing more than you're actually using, then that's when you actually build up credits on your bill and are able to use those credits that roll over into future months. And so I think for a lot of folks, the easiest way to really understand this is by seeing it visually, as opposed to having me kind of explain it to you. And so that's what this chart really does. This graphic helps to kind of see where the solar offset of net metering comes from. So what you see here on the left is daily solar production and your daily energy usage. And then on the right, we see monthly solar production energy usage over the course of the year. And so this is, just based on average data, but for most folks, well, back when we were going to work every day, for most folks, there would be a little peak in demand in the morning, and then your demand falls as you're at work. And then when you come home in the evening, your demand goes back up when you turn on lights, turn on the TV, fire up the microwave, all of that until you go to bed. But your solar panels are going to be producing electricity, obviously, when the sun is out and shining. So that leads to a mismatch for a lot of folks during the course of the day. And so net metering allows you to benefit directly on your electric bill for that excess electricity that you're producing, even though you aren't using it immediately at that time. And so how this plays out over the course of the year is that in the summer months or months with longer days, you will typically see that you're producing more than you're actually using. And this is under the assumption that your system is designed to cover up to 100% of your average annual usage. So you're producing these credits in the months where you're producing more than you're actually using. But then in the kind of shoulder parts of this graph, in the months like January and December, where the days are shorter, there's not as much sun because it's cloudy, you can actually use those credits that you accumulated over the summer to reduce your bill, even though you aren't producing as much electricity that month as you're using. So here in Indiana, we do have a little bit of a special context. Again, I mentioned at the top of the presentation about SEA 309, the anti-net metering bill that was passed in 2017. Basically that bill created a timetable for ending the current regime of net metering in Indiana. So right now, if you install your system by July 1, 2022, for the most part, especially in IPL and Duke territory, this is likely, you will receive a net metering, full retail rate net metering until 2032. But systems installed after that July 1, 2022 deadline will not receive net metering. Instead, when net metering ends, and so that's both for systems installed after 2022 and for those systems installed earlier, but then after the 2032 timeline, we will get a new credit that will be an excess distributed generation credit. And instead of being a one-to-one net metering rate, homeowners will be credited at the marginal price plus 25%. So that's typically about a third of the retail rate plus 25%. So there's still a lot of uncertainty around this because that actual rate hasn't been set yet. We do expect sometime here in the next potentially a couple weeks, but sometime this year, we expect the process for actually setting this rate to start. But for now, we can use our kind of best back of the envelope estimates, and you'll see how we've done that when we get to the economics section. The last thing I want to note here is that the reason net metering is ending like this, and the reason the electric utilities were able to pass this legislation in 2017 that is putting this timeline into effect, is because they had political power and we didn't. Solar advocates and were on the ground in 2017, fought tooth and nail, and the utilities were still able to push this through. And so this is why it's so important for us as a movement of solar supporters, solar owners, solar advocates to come together, be organized, and make sure that we're able to fight for our energy rights here in Indiana, because there is still time for us to change this. While this is the current law of the land, we obviously aren't to 2022 yet, and so there's still time for us to make sure that excess solar energy is fairly valued, and that the solar credit is returned to homeowners and businesses that have solar installed. Okay, so I know that was a lot of me talking. We do have a few frequently asked questions here, and then we'll cut to the questions that we've received in the chat during my presentation. So the first is about warranties. So there are three main type of warranties for you to consider. And again, these are all for co-op members. They will be spelled out for you what to expect from your installer. But the three types of warranties are one, the labor warranty. And so that is your direct agreement with the installer, covering everything that they actually worked on. And that can range anything from a couple of years to a lifetime warranty. But again, it's just an agreement with an installer, so your mileage may vary there. Next is the equipment warranty. And so you'll have separate equipment warranties for both the panels and for the inverter. And those range anywhere from 10 years on the low end to 25 years on the high end. And oftentimes there are ways to upgrade those if you want a longer warranty. And again, that will cover all of the actual equipment itself. So if something fails before the warranty is expired, that can be replaced. And then finally, there's the production warranty. And so this is a warranty that, again, varies some by manufacturer, but typically covers up to 25 years. Which is generally the established lifetime of the solar panels, or the market standard for the lifetime of the solar panels. And what it says is that in year 25, your panels will be producing anywhere between 80 to 90 some odd % of the electricity that they were producing on day one when you switched your system on. And so that gives you some certainty that these panels are going to be producing as you expect over the lifetime, the 25-year lifetime of the system. And if for whatever reason they aren't producing, these panels will be replaced by the manufacturer. So I know we saw a question earlier about the lifetime of the system. So that is what you can expect as your rough lifetime of the system. So the next question is about property value and taxes. So first on taxes here in Indiana, there is a renewable energy exclusion on property taxes. So that means that even though your property value will be increasing, which is what all of the data nationally shows, that your property value will increase with investment in solar, your taxes won't actually go up. But on a more detailed answer on the property value question, we don't really have any specific Indiana data on that, but a good rule of thumb that I've seen other folks use is that, if you put a dollar into your solar system, you can expect a dollar out and an increased value. Homeowners insurance is also another important one to cover, and for most solar homeowners, they don't actually even see an increase in their monthly premium or their payments to the company. Some see a little bit, but not very much. And I would appreciate any solar owners who are on the line. Feel free to share your experience to all attendees in the chat of how your solar panels impacted your homeowner's insurance. It is really important to make sure you contact your homeowner's insurance and let them know that you did the installation though. Next, we've already heard some about weather damage and snow cover, but these panels are designed to handle the elements, designed to be outside. So when it does snow, however, you won't be producing electricity, but because they're designed to absorb energy from the sun, they will melt that snow off and get back to producing quickly. As far as weather damage, hail damage can be a concern, but oftentimes the if it's bad enough to be damaging your solar panels, it's also damaging your roof. So you can get help from your homeowner's insurance, or depending on the type of damage, there might be some warranty coverage as well. How long do systems last? As I mentioned already, 25 years is what we expect, is kind of the industry standard. And then finally, these last two are a little bit tricky here in Indiana, unfortunately. So will my HOA or homeowners association allow solar on my home? Unfortunately, there is no statewide law guaranteeing what we call solar access to homeowners living in HOAs. So you have to read your bylaws and take it on a case-by-case basis. This is something we've been, again, organizing around and fighting to change the law on. But hopefully your HOA will work with you. And if this is something that you feel might be an issue, please reach out and contact us. We're happy to help any way that we can. And we also have resources for free available on our website to help you with those issues. And then finally, a historic district, again, there's no clear, bright line, though in general, they probably won't allow street-facing installations, but you will have to go and present to your historic district and get their approval. All right, so that's kind of the end of our technology section. I know I saw a few questions come in. Roger, is there anything I should try to answer?
Yeah, Zach, we had a lot of questions. Thank you everyone for asking so many questions. One of the big topics that really came up was roof repairs and roof replacement, and also how much it would cost to have to remove solar panels to replace your roof. Yeah, and I think you did a good job covering warranties. But if you can talk about roof replacements and what you should expect in terms of that.
Sure, there's definitely a range. So we've seen anywhere from, on the low end, a fixed cost to on the higher end where it's generally a cost per panel. But anywhere from $1,000 on the low end, probably up to if you have a really large system, can be several $1,000s. So there's quite a range there, and that's really where we advocate for. If you think you're going to need roof repair, get it done before installing the panels.
Great, thanks so much. And then we had some questions just about how net metering works, and also about how, if you have an electric vehicle, how that would tie in.
Sure. So is there a specific question about net metering, or should I?
No, I guess just obviously you're using your electricity during the day, but just about how it goes in and goes out. Obviously we've talked about batteries, and Terry and Mike have a battery, but because the cost of batteries is pretty cost prohibitive. Just what people can expect.
Sure. So again, net metering, and I'll go ahead and go back to this slide because I think this is kind of the best way to really visualize it. Net metering really allows you to get an offset on your electric bill for the electricity that you're producing during the day that you aren't using. And so this is where having a battery, in some other states that have different kind of electric utility rate structures, where having a battery can allow you to shift some of that and actually use up what's in the battery before you're buying new electricity from the utility. But here in Indiana, there's really not all that much value there. So net metering just allows you to get a full retail rate credit on your bill from the electricity the excess electricity that you're producing over the course of a month. And remember this, the netting period is monthly. So what they do is they tally up how much you produced and how much you used, and whatever is left over, if you used more than you actually produced, then you'll have a bill to pay if you don't have any credits to spend down. Versus if you produced more than you actually used, then all you'll pay is the fixed charge, and then you'll end up accumulating credits that you can use at other times of the year. So to answer the question about how an electric vehicle would tie in, so an electric vehicle would obviously increase your demand and increase your electricity consumption. So that is one thing. Mike and Terry mentioned how the size of their installation was limited by the amount of electricity they used in the previous year. And so if you are anticipating, adding an electric vehicle, which would obviously change that, you can let the utility know ahead of time, and then you can size your system larger in anticipation of that increased demand. And I should also mention that if you are really interested in an electric vehicle, we do offer as part of the co-op, in addition to talking about battery storage with your installer, you can also have a level 2 electric vehicle charger installed as part of your installation. And that really allows you to speed up the process of charging your vehicle. So it doesn't take necessarily all night the way that a normal plug-in would take. And you can also get a special inverter that would actually allow you to charge direct using the DC electricity from your panels, so you don't lose anything in the process of converting the electricity from DC to AC that happens in your inverter. So yeah, I think electric vehicles and solar go together really well. A lot of people get really excited about being able to basically use the fuel from the sun to drive around, as opposed to having to pay gas, or even if you just have an electric vehicle charging off the grid, knowing that Indiana's electric grid is about somewhere anywhere between 60 and 70% coal at any given time. So that really kind of allows you to feel even better about driving your electric vehicle. And I should also mention that if you're interested in the EV charger or battery storage, let your installer know. They can either install either of those options right now as part of the co-op package, or they can make sure to design your system so they're compatible in the future if you're interested in installing either a battery storage system or a level 2 EV charger.
Great. And then thanks, Zach. And then we have some questions about net metering and also about an EV charger. So Marcia asked, could you have a solar array dedicated to powering a battery that could charge an electric car?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely charge your EV with the sun. Depending, there are different ways to set it up, but you can definitely have it set up so that your either your inverter, you're charging directly through your inverter, or you're charging when your panels are producing. Your electric vehicle will soak up those electrons first before anything excess gets sent out to the grid.
Great. And then and Mike had asked if all co-op related systems are grid tied, or if you can do off the grid systems as well.
Sure. So folks can definitely do off the grid systems if they choose. 99% of the people we work with are grid tied systems, just because of it's cost prohibitive to do a system where you're completely standing alone, and that a lot of that has to do with the cost of battery storage and the other things you need to really make that work. But if that's something that you're interested in and are willing to pay for, then absolutely you can have an off-grid system.
Great. And then my other reminder to everyone would be just when you're submitting stuff in the chat, just to make it go to all panelists and attendees. And then Marcia asked here, if the EV is usually not home during the day when the sun is shining, you need to power a battery to recharge the EV battery. Good. Yeah.
Well, so sorry, I'm just reading the question.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so I think that you could have it set up so it's recharging off of the battery, but I would say that I'm not sure that that's the typical setup, though. I don't want to speak out of turn. That's not exactly something that we deal with all the time. So that would be something you'd want to talk directly to your installer about. Yeah, because if you charge in the evening, you would be getting electricity from the grid if your panels are not producing.
Right. Also, in terms of net metering, I have solar panels on my house as well. And I mean, the great thing about net metering is that it really kind of acts like a battery, because you get the same credit, because when you're not in a global pandemic, obviously, right? Me and my wife and are at work during the day, and our kids are at daycare and school. And when we're all out and we're not using electricity, we're sending the electrons back to the grid. And then when we come home at night, we're getting credit for everything we send out. We do not have a battery. But I mean, last month was our first time where we actually had a negative utility bill, because we luckily produced more than we used.
Something we're celebrating, to be sure.
Great. Well, I'll let you continue. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Roger, and thank you for all the great questions. Again, I'm going to keep us moving because I'm looking at the clock, but please continue sharing questions and just make sure that you're sharing it to all panelists and attendees. There are a lot of folks on the line who can answer these questions as well. A lot of savvy solar owners on the line as well. Okay, so let's get to part 2, how the solar co-ops work. So I kind of gave a really high level overview at the beginning, but how the co-ops are designed is really to help you get the best value on installation and make every step of the process easier, because you're not on your own. So you get support from Solar United neighbors through every step of the process, and you also get to plug in to a growing network of solar supporters and solar owners here locally in your community, around the state, and then ultimately around the country. And as I mentioned earlier, helping us grow this solar movement is really critical if we're going to actually embrace a renewable energy future that we think we need. So here's a diagram that kind of goes into a little more detail about the co-op process. I will say for both the Hamilton County and Boone County co-ops, which we're just launching today, we're right at the very beginning of this process. For the Indianapolis co-op, which we launched actually in December of last year, we are in the 3rd bucket here, which I'll get to shortly. But folks can still join all 3 co-ops. So at the beginning of the co-op process, we're really focused on growing the group. We host public meetings like this. We're trying to help community members who are interested in going solar learn as much as they can about solar technology and economics, and how the co-op can help make the process of going solar easy. We encourage people to sign up. And so anybody who is interested, right now you can feel free to visit our website. If you're interested in the Hamilton County co-op or the Boone County co-op, all you have to do is go to solarunitedneighbors.org/Boone for the Boone County co-op, or /Hamilton County for the Hamilton County co-op. As you might have guessed, you can go to /Indianapolis for the Indianapolis Solar Co-op. But you sign up for the group, and this group process is completely free, and there's no obligation to go solar. So really what the sign up allows you to do is to get in the queue to get a free custom quote for rooftop solar at a group rate. When you sign up, we do a remote roof assessment. So that's how we make sure that we think your roof will be suitable for solar based on all the factors that I talked about previously. And then once we kind of give your roof a thumbs up, you'll officially be part of the group. And the kind of most important part about this is that we really rely on word of mouth to help us grow the group. We rely on folks like you to tell your neighbors, your family members, your coworkers about this solar co-op process, and really help us get the group as big as possible. And as we grow the group, then once we get to a certain threshold, generally once we get to around 30 participants, that's when we issue a request for proposal, or RFP. And that's where we go out to our list of installers who are interested in working in this area and say, hey, we have 30, 40, 50 homeowners and businesses in Boone County or Hamilton County, and they're interested in going solar and they're motivated. Give us some bids so that we can help them get the best possible deal. And so when we get those bids from the installers, we help process those bids and compile them so you can actually look at them side by side and compare them apples to apples. And then we actually have what's called the selection committee process, where volunteers from the solar co-op, just ordinary co-op members, agree to be a part of the group. You sit down, you take a look at all of those bids side by side in a selection committee meeting, and then democratically as part of that group, select one single installer to serve everybody in that group. And so then once that installer is selected, we sign a deadline. Right now, the deadlines for both of these, all three of the co-ops actually have been extended because of COVID-19. So the sign-up deadline isn't until September. But before that sign-up deadline, we're trying to get as many people as possible into the group. And once the installer is selected, as soon as you join the group, and for those who have already been in the group, as I mentioned earlier, you will get a welcome letter from the installer that kind of outlines their sales process. You will get a summary of the winning bid, so what to expect as far as pricing, equipment, warranties, and service from the installer, so that everything is easy for you to know what's coming. And then you will schedule a site visit with your installer, and you're able to still do those today, even with, oh, I'm sorry, I see a question, RFP, that means request for proposals. And that's how we get these different bids from installers. So once the installer is selected and you're connected with the installer, you will schedule a site visit. That's where the installer actually looks at your specific property. And you're able to do that even with social distancing. They can do the actual site visit outside, or some installers are using drones now to actually take a look at your roof, and then setting up usually a video call where they can see anything they need to see inside your house, like the electrical panel. And then you will receive a custom quote, a custom proposal based on the solar co-op pricing and your individual needs. And then that's when you can decide whether or not it's the right time for you to go solar. And again, the process is completely free with no obligation to go solar until you decide whether or not you want to sign on the dotted line. And then ultimately, we'll try to get as many installations done as possible, and hopefully you'll install solar as part of the co-op. And then because we are building a movement, we will always end with a party. We'll see what that party looks like here in the near future, or the far future with COVID-19, but we'll make sure that we're helping to connect people and really building this solar movement. And I do see one question about if you were in the Indianapolis Solar Co-op last year, if you want an updated quote, if you need to join. And yes, you do, but it's the exact same process. Just go to solarunitedneighbors.org/Indianapolis. You can join the co-op again, and you'll get an updated quote from the installer that's been selected for that group by the current cohort. Okay, so I already kind of covered who picks the installer, but it's co-op members like you, volunteers who really want to dig into the details, and they consider everything from the price to equipment quality, warranties, experience, and business location. So all those things are considered, and that's how we really take a holistic view and making sure you're getting the best value as part of the co-op process. All right, so did I miss any questions? I only saw a handful, so I answered a few along the way, but Roger, did I miss anything?
No, we have a question from Leslie here about the retail rate for net metering and about the Boone REMC and how that compares to Duke and IPL. But I feel like that goes next with this next part for solar economics. Yep,
I will definitely cover that under solar economics. Thank you for that question, Leslie. So let's get going. Okay, so as Leslie pointed out, we have seen we have different electric rates for different utilities, but historically those electric rates are going up, up, and up. And so we have here on this chart Duke and IPL. We don't have the rates for Boone REMC on here, but they are actually a little bit higher. But so what you see here is this upward trend, and the reason we like to frame the economics section of this presentation around this chart is that your purchase of solar panels shouldn't be considered in a vacuum. It needs to be considered in the context of this increasing upward trend in electric costs. So this is real historical data, and we see historically electric utility rates have been going up over the long term by around 2% annually. And so what solar allows you to do is to take some of these, monthly electric utility payments that you'll have over the next 25, 30 years, because you're going to be paying somebody for electricity over that time period, and bundle them up front and turn it into an asset that will actually generate a return over that timeline, as opposed to continuing to pay the electric utility at their raising costs, or as their rates go up each month. And the other part of the equation is that solar is increasingly affordable. When we really started tracking data for our co-ops in 2014, we were able to compare it to national average for the solar industry as a whole, and see that we've seen consistent cost savings through our solar co-ops each year. And that's in the broader context of the entire market becoming more and more affordable each and every year. And while that trend has started to slow in the last few years, costs are continuing to go down, and solar panel technologies continue to improve. And so where do those cost savings come from? So again, this is based on actual industry data, looking over time where the cost of installing solar comes from. And so based on the per watt costs, what you're seeing here is a bar chart that breaks down the cost of the actual system components, the panels and racking, and inverter and all of that. That's in yellow at the bottom of the bar. We also have labor, which is the gray in the middle. And then we have the soft costs in the top. And soft costs are things like acquiring customers, permitting, all of that. And so even though what you see is that the cost of the components and labor have really gone down drastically since 2010, those soft costs have remained sticky and now actually make up the largest part of the cost of residential solar installation. And the great thing about the solar co-op is that the co-ops actually directly cut into that soft cost and help the installers save money in that area, which then they're able to share those savings with you through the co-op process. So, okay, so here is the example pricing that I know for a lot of folks is really important. So what we're showing here is based on kind of estimates and averages. So it's important to note that everybody's installation costs will look a little bit different, and your system will be based on your individual needs. But these are based on some averages. And what we're seeing here is two different columns for two different size systems. One is a 4 kilowatt system and the other is an 8 kilowatt system. And so a 4 kilowatt system is on the smaller side for residential installation. And an 8 kilowatt system is on the bigger side. But again, just to kind of give you a sense of the range that you might see from your proposal. So again, based on this average pricing of $256 per watt, that's where we multiply that per watt cost times the size of the system. So times 4,000 for this first column, or times 8,000 for the second column here. And that's how we get the little over $10,000 for the 4 kilowatt system, and a little over $20,000 for the 8 kilowatt system. And then you're able to take the 26% federal tax credit off the top. So this tax credit until last year was 30%. It is starting to step down now and is currently 26% for systems installed in calendar year 2020. So that's where we get the net cost. And then we get to the lower part of this chart, and that's where we really see where the value of your solar installation comes from. So this is through the accumulated electricity savings that we're actually estimating here based on real rates here in Indiana. And so what you see here is that you are accumulating savings, and we project out to 2032, which is the end of net metering. And as Leslie pointed out, that's in investor-owned utility territories like IPL and Duke. But actually in Boone County REMC, there is no scheduled end to their retail rate net metering. So they have full retail rate net metering, and that will continue at least currently through past 2032. And other REMCs, if you are in a different rural co-op, you might have different policies. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us directly and we can help you find what your specific policies are, because they're all different across the different co-ops. But where net metering does end in Duke and IPL territory under current law in 2032, we've used our best estimate of what the post net metering rate will look like to get you a estimate for the cumulative 25-year savings for your system, which again is the average or standard lifetime for the solar panels. And so that's where we get to the net profit at the bottom here of just a hair under $5,000 for that 4 kilowatt system, and just under $10,000 for the 8 kilowatt system. Again, this is going to look different for different folks, but what this chart really allows you to see is that the value of your solar installation comes from the cumulative net electricity savings. The last thing I want to note here, which it's not included on this chart, but there are also things called SRECs, or solar renewable energy credits. The reason we don't include them on this chart here is that they are a fluctuating market product designed to represent the green value of the electricity you're producing with your solar panels that then you can sell on the market. And Indiana does not have its own market, but Indiana solar owners can sell into the Ohio market. But because of some legislation that passed in Ohio last year, the solar market, or the SREC market in Ohio is very low. So the credits aren't worth as much. But if that's something you're interested in, you can talk to your installer and they'll make sure you get those credits registered. And even if it's not very much money, you could still see a check of around $100 a year for some of these, for like the 4 kilowatt system. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the tax credit. I mentioned earlier that it's already stepped down from 30% to 26% this year. It's scheduled to go down to 22% next year in 2021, and then phase out entirely for residential installations in 2022. So that's along with trying to maximize the availability of net metering, a good reason to make the investment in solar this year before the tax credit continues to step down. But another point I want to make on this slide is that this is another prime example of why we're trying to organize and build a solar movement that has real political power and can make sure we extend effective policies like the investment tax credit that has played such a key role in expanding solar here in Indiana and also around the country. So the last thing we want to touch on here in economics is about financing. And unfortunately, there really aren't any special financing options available here in Indiana, the way that there are in some other states. So we really encourage folks who are interested in financing, one, if you are able to pursue any kind of standard loans or a home equity line of credit, that will probably be your best opportunity as far as low interest and low closing cost options. Most installers do offer financing, but they tend to have higher closing costs, higher interest rates, and tend to not be as favorable to consumers as what might be available on the market. There are also solar loans or bridge loans, which typically will cover the cost of, or the value of the the ITC, the federal tax credit. And those are often either very low interest or sometimes even zero interest loans that then you pay back when you're able to monetize that tax credit in the future. Another thing that we don't have listed on here, but might be of interest to homeowners who might be interested in refinancing their mortgage. There are certain banks that will allow you to refinance your mortgage and roll in the cost of your solar installation into that refinance mortgage via an FHA mortgage. So we're seeing really great interest rates on that now. And so if you have an older mortgage with higher interest rates, there are case studies and examples of folks who have been able to actually refinance their mortgage, add the cost of the solar installations to that loan, and then still cut their monthly mortgage costs because of the reduction in interest rate. And then because you're immediately seeing savings in your electric bill between those two savings and the refinancing and your electric savings, you can be net cash flow positive from day one. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know, and we can help point you in the direction of some resources there. And then finally, if there are any rural business owners on the line, you can there is grant funding available through the USDA's Rural Energy for America program, or REAP program, which can go to cover cost of solar installations, other renewable energy installations, and energy efficiency upgrades. So if that's something that you're interested in pursuing, also please let us know, and we might be able to help you out there. Okay, so well, I guess before I go on to what's next, are there any other questions that I should cover on the economics section, Roger?
So Liz asked, once the co-ops get off the ground, when would folks actually probably get an installation? And I think this also is in regards to what kind of tax credit would you be eligible for?
Oh, that's a great question. So co-op, if you join this round of the co-op, you should be able to have your installation done this calendar year, so you would get the 26% tax credit. It really kind of depends on how quickly the co-ops grow, so that we need to have enough members of the co-op to do that selection committee process. But once we reach that threshold, we can select an installer quickly, and then especially these days, installers are very, very interested in business. So as long as you're motivated to get the installation done, the installer will be motivated to get the installation done as well. And you should have no trouble getting the 2020 tax credit, so 26% tax credit.
Thanks, Zach. And that's it for questions right now, but could you also just talk about how Indianapolis is going and where that co-op is right now?
Oh, sure. So the Indianapolis Solar Co-op has about 85 members in it, and it's continuing to grow. We've extended the sign-up deadline through the end of summer. We already have an installer selected, so if you live in Indianapolis, you can join the co-op and be connected with the selected installer, Jefferson Electric, pretty much right away, and they will be in touch to try to get you a custom proposal. So that co-op is going swimmingly, but we also hope that folks in Boone County and Hamilton County and the surrounding areas will join our new co-ops as well, so we can get those groups big enough to go through the installer selection process there. So on that note, I do want to encourage everybody who is interested in going solar to go and join one of our co-ops. Again, here are the URLs for the co-op landing pages. The co-op landing page is designed with a bunch of information about the co-op process. There's actually a recording of an earlier version of this information session. So if you missed any parts of this or want to share it with a friend, you can see all the key information in a recording on the co-op webpage. You also will be able to see updates about the group and upcoming events on that webpage. And the most important part is there's a bright orange button at top that says join our co-op, and you can click that, fill out the form. It only takes a couple of minutes, and you'll be a co-op member. And then finally, the most important thing is to tell your friends, neighbors, coworkers, family, anybody who you think might be interested in learning about solar, getting a free custom quote through the Solar Co-op. We really can appreciate your help in spreading the word. So that's a key part of the co-op model is making sure that we're getting the word out and that every community member who's interested in solar knows about this opportunity. So that is really the end of the presentation. So thank you so much, especially to you diehards who stuck it out through hearing me talk via a computer for the last hour. Again, my name is Zach Schalk. I am the Indiana Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot us an email at inteam@solarunitedneighbors.org, and we will answer your questions. We will be following up with a recording of this webinar to everybody who RSVP'd, and we'll make sure it's available online as well. And I think I saw somebody who was interested in seeing the slides, and so I'm sure we can share a PDF of the slides as well for folks who are interested. And on that, Roger, were there any other questions that came in?
David had a question about condo associations installing solar.
Sure. So that can be tricky. It kind of depends on how your condo association, how it meters electricity. Basically, a solar installation in Indiana, the solar owner has to, the installation has to plug into one single meter, and that meter has to be connected with the owner of that installation, and that is where the bill credits will go. So if the condos are individually metered and there's space on the roof for solar panels that feed those individual meters, then that could work out. Yeah, so yeah, the meters are individual, but the collectively owned roof, and the roof is collectively owned and maintained. I think that should be able to work out as long as there are separate installations that feed separate meters on those roofs. But if that's something you're interested in, please feel free to reach out, and that's also something that the installer can help you work through the technical details of. All right, well, without seeing any other questions, I think that's probably it for now. So again, just thank you to everybody. I hope you'll consider joining one of our solar co-ops, and I hope you'll help us spread the word.